we were so negative about Tim Pool because Tim Pool's sort of hiding the ball. This guy, at least, is not afraid to let you know who he is. He is a bigot. I think he would say by his own definition that he is a bigot when it comes to trans people, when it comes to gay people. He's even said to his buddy Dave Rubin, I don't know what's a more, a greater definition of bigotry than I don't recognize your marriage. I don't recognize the fact that you should be able to adopt children, even though you're my friend.
We work together, and in theory, I should be like more understanding and be able to recognize your humanity based on our personal connection. And yet, no.
Now, his bigotry is, again, grounded in religious fundamentalism. His bigotry is grounded in religious fundamentalism. I give you, ladies and gentlemen, Ben Shapiro.
And this is always the threat that the left likes to bring, and it starts in academia, it bleeds all the way down. The idea is that if you make an argument based in fact that you're going to cause somebody else to commit suicide. Now, in American law, and in law typically, the idea that
should be clear. He is responding to Josh Hawley and Kiara Bridges' exchange the other day, where Hawley said was talking about abortion, but was saying, like, how come you don't say women? And Kiara Bridges basically said, well, in not so many words, she said it more succinctly than I'm saying, the category of women is a gender category, and it does not exclude everyone who can get pregnant. In the instance that Hawley wanted to focus on, of course, that was transgender women, but 10-year-olds are not women either.
Mm-hmm.
They can get pregnant.
And women can't necessarily all get pregnant.
And not all women can get pregnant.
Right, even if you are a cis woman with, traditionally female reproductive organs.
And when you say a transgender man can't get pregnant, you are denying, or a man can't get pregnant. It's a gender term. Does not necessarily coincide whether you have a uterus or not. You are denying the existence of trans people, and you are making them pariahs and stigmas. You're stigmatizing it. And we know from the data that this stigmatization leads to increase in suicide and an increase in violence against these people. We could look at the same data from 25 or 30 or 40 years ago in terms of gay people. Same thing. All right, so here is Shapiro, though, talking about facts. It is not a fact that only women can get pregnant. That's not a fact. Girls can get pregnant. Trans men can get pregnant. That's a fact.
And this is always the threat that the left likes to bring, and it starts in academia, it bleeds all the way down. The idea is that if you make an argument based in fact that you're going to cause somebody else to commit suicide. Now, in American law, and in law typically, the idea that you can cause someone else to commit suicide is pretty dicey territory generally. And you actually have some pretty specific evidence saying that somebody is telling somebody to commit suicide in order to even attempt to hold them accountable for their commission of suicide, because there's an intervening actor, namely the person who's committing the suicide. The generalized point the left tries to make is that if you say that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, a bunch of people who believe they are members of the opposite sex will be so despondent about the fact that biological reality exists and that you are saying it. Not even that it exists, that you're saying it, that they're going to go commit suicide. There's only one problem with this line of argument. It's complete nonsense. There's no statistical evidence to suggest that the wildly disparate suicidal ideation rate among LGBT people suddenly corrects itself to meet the cis norm, meaning people who know what sex they are and it is their biological sex, the heterosexual norm, that the suicide rates, the suicidal ideation rates, do not suddenly become equal if you live in an area that is highly tolerant of LGBT. They're still wildly disproportionate, which suggests that there are a bunch of other intervening factors, including serious comorbidities with regard to anxiety and depression that attend upon LGBT identity.
All right, pause it for a second. We're not allowed to him like using comorbidities wrong. because comorbidity is things that lead to death. Now, maybe he's suggesting that that psychological. I don't know. But first off, you don't need to prove this in a court of law to say that you are adding to an environment that stigmatizes people. But the fact of the matter is that you can measure rates of depression and of suicide ideation amongst gay people and kids and see that they have gone down relative to the way they were 35 years ago.
U.S. News and World Report reported on a study in the Yale School of Public Health, basically showing that in countries that are more accepting of people who are LGBTQ, fewer gay and bisexual men take their own lives. So there's been, studies based on different discrimination factors in different nations and have shown a correlation between that, which should be obvious to anybody, but yeah.
And you'll notice, too, the little trick he does here. He's not saying having an area or a geographic region or a city that is more amenable to LGBTQ people doesn't diminish their rates of depression or suicide ideation. He says there's still wide disparity. He doesn't say that disparity maybe shrinks a little bit. He says still wide disparity between the hetero and cis people and LGBTQ people. Because the fact of the matter is that we still live in a society that's still a little bit difficult, it doesn't necessarily, it could be your parents.
It's also getting worse with Don't Say Gay bills throughout the country.
And it's getting worse. But the fact is, we do know for a fact that if you grow up in a society where you are not stigmatized and not made to be a pariah and not othered and not demonized, that it is mentally healthier for you. This is obvious.
But he's conflating an individual comment by Josh Hawley with a larger societal, atmosphere that contributes to that kind of suicidal ideation. He's trying to make it seem like, just the language. You're trying to police the language coming out of people. Just if you're claiming that biological sex is a thing, right? That is going to be the cause of somebody trying to commit suicide. That is not what the left is arguing, obviously. But, that conflating the individual with societal is a hallmark of conservative thought.
But having a senator do this stuff, without a doubt.
No, but exactly. But it's a part of the larger atmosphere within that context, right? Like they really want I think the right wants to, make it seem like, you can't do anything right if you're misgendering something. No, that's not the case. People are learning. It's a learning curve, and you just have to try to be a better person and not actively try to be an asshole. But also I think some people are missing this. The undercurrent of it too is they want to stigmatize trans people as mentally ill, and they want, it's the same reason that Candace Owens, for the last two major mass shootings with Uvalde and with the shooting in Illinois, has one in the former, she spread a 4chan conspiracy theory that the shooter was trans, which was false. And then the second time, she was making a claim that because the shooter in Illinois escaped using women's clothes as a way to disguise himself, that he was trans. And so this contributes to their mental illness point. They want they want to make trans people pariahs who it doesn't matter the conditions that society creates for them. They are just, they're deranged, they're wrong. And nothing that we can do will affect that on a societal level. So like, I just want to make that point so people are aware of that as one of the underpinnings of their argument.
And be clear too, Ben Shapiro understands this dynamic. You don't, I mean, all you need to do is Google Ben Shapiro and anti-Semitism. You could go back to just, I don't know, 3 months ago. Put up this tweet thread that I just sent you. This is Ben Shapiro talking about Whoopi Goldberg. Get to the top one if you can. And Shapiro writes Whoopi Goldberg explaining that, go all the way up, go to the top of that thread. Yeah, Whoopi Goldberg explaining that the Holocaust wasn't about race because there were two groups of white people isn't just insipid, it's insidious. It's downplaying the minority status of Jews in order to uphold bullshit intersectional arguments to justify anti-Semitism today. So ignore the part about, his issue with anti-Semitism. I mean, with intersectional stuff. No need to litigate that at this point. But this is a whole Twitter thread. Keep going down. Where he understands that, he understands that anti-Semitism is grown by just having sort of like an ambiance. And anti-Semitism in the series is only present when it springs from actual white supremacists. Other acts of anti-Semitism are just a reflection of the dispossessed lashing out against those who have more institutional power. The attempt to abstract the causes of the Holocaust from Jew hatred, demands inhumanity is actually a way of obscuring and covering for anti-Semitism. In other words, he understands the power of words.
There's a ripple effect when certain people with large platforms, in his opinion, create an environment and use language that contributes to bigotry. That's so interesting.
Yep.
That was a great memory moment for you, Sam.
What's that?
Just remembering that thread by him.
Oh,
that was
yeah.
a good connection.
I mean, you don't even need to remember the thread. You could just Google anti-Semitism and Ben Shapiro, and he will go on and on and on. And many times, not all times, I don't think he's quite right in this situation, although I don't appreciate what she had to say there. But he understands how anti-Semitism grows and festers, and through just words, through just facts. Would Ben Shapiro really like it if every night anybody did a story about the media said, incidentally, Jews are overrepresented in the media? Does he think that wouldn't, if we said that every night on the news? Jews are overrepresented in certain areas of banking. Would he think that wouldn't add to anti-Semitism? And particularly if those speakers were doing it with an agenda. If they were bringing it up, can you imagine if a senator doing a hearing on banking and Jamie Dimon came up and said, isn't it the case, Jamie Dimon, CEO of Chase, isn't it the case that Jews are overrepresented in banking? It's just a fact. It's just a fact. Isn't it? What's the percentage of Jews in this country? How many of them hold C-suite positions in banking? I mean, I certainly would think that line of questioning, if it was completely delivered by somebody certainly who had a history of saying, like, there's too much sensitivity around this whole language about Jews in banking, that they were adding to anti-Semitism. Ben Shapiro knows what he's denying here. And he knows that if it was about something that he cared about, he would be screaming from the rooftops about it.
Yeah. Instead, he'll just he'll contribute to bigotry for every other group except for the one that he belongs to, tweeting like Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage, for example. So, other religious groups, he's okay with it.
Ben Shapiro is a religious fundamentalist who does not operate on logic, or as he says over and over again. There is no logic to his libertarian ideology where he decides, well, abortion it should be outlawed. Well, gay marriage should be outlawed. No, he's a religious fundamentalist who finds it useful to find some other ideology to hide behind because he's a liar. He's a liar. He's lying. And he lies like this so openly because he thinks God is on his side and that he's doing God's work. And God says, it's okay for you to lie as long as you do it on my behalf, Ben. That's the way he works.